hope you're all well. I have gone for a little bit of a 60s vibe today. I'm not sure how much I like it. You know, I feel like I look more like the caterer from Love Actually, but we move. Apologies for the slightly late upload. I have no explanation. I have been a bit anxious at the moment. I will be uploading once a week from now on. I put a little bit too much pressure on myself trying to do twice. So today I'm going to be filming a video all about the phenomenon of cringy fanfiction. The Google definition of fanfiction is fiction written by a fan of and featuring characters from a particular TV series, films, etc. Personally, I think a lot of fanfiction definitions, whether on Google or Urban Dictionary, do slightly fail to recognise sort of the fanfictions about real people, such as boy bands. There are so many layers and categories and genres to fanfiction. There's alternative universe, there's sequel fanfictions, there's smut. I hate that word. The word smut makes me want to crawl out of my body and die. There's love stories, there's original character fanfictions, which were my personal favourite when I was growing up. Of course, the infamous YN fanfictions. If you guys don't know what YN fanfictions, it was basically a second person written fanfiction that would be like, "Hi YN," which means your name. And there are so many different platforms to post fanfiction on as well. There's obviously fanfiction.net, there's Archive of Our Own, there's the infamous Wattpad, there's also Tumblr, there's also Quotev, I think that's how it's pronounced. That's where I read a lot of my Harry Potter fanfiction, was on Quotev. Now, I haven't read fanfiction for around like 4-5 years now. I am just not invested in any fandoms enough to want to read fanfiction about it, but I was a very big fanfiction reader when I was younger. In particular, I loved a bit of Harry Potter fanfiction. Draco Malfoy love stories, they hit fucking different. I also really enjoyed reading Until Dawn alternative universe fanfiction. There are thousands of well-written, good fanfictions. So don't take this as me slating fanfictions or fanfiction readers, fanfiction writers. And when I'm talking about sort of the cringy fanfictions in this particular genre of fanfiction, I am not trying to take the piss out of the people that read it, because I used to read it, or the people that wrote it, because I'm pretty sure we all look back on it and just laugh because it was so hilarious. And I do look back on these fanfictions with a lot of fondness, just because it reminds me of when I was young. I want to look back on it with a bit of self-awareness as well, and also a little bit of reflection, because as I was researching for this video, I did sort of realise how problematic some parts of these fanfictions were. So the first thing I want to talk about is the tropes within these fanfictions. What type of fanfictions I'm talking about, the sort of characteristics within these fanfictions. So the type of fanfiction I'm talking about is a very particular niche of fanfiction between 2014 and 2015-16. And it was usually a love story involving a original character and a band member, but I did read a few of these which obviously involved my one true love, Draco Malfoy. I used to have a fucking huge crush on him when I was younger. I unfortunately did not read Harry Styles fanfiction growing up because I was not a 1D stan. I'm sorry, I was not a 1D stan. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to break down the storyline tropes, the original character tropes, and the love interest tropes, just so we can sort of see what we're all talking about here. So the first thing I want to talk about is the tropes within the original character, and the first and most obvious trope is they are not like other girls. They read books. They're ugly, they get no male attention at all, but they have long wavy brown hair which they throw into a messy bun, a heart-shaped face, naturally clear and tan skin, plump lips, and light coloured eyes, but they get no male attention because they're just so ugly. The often recurring face claims for these original characters was either, for some reason, Barbara Palvin or Lily Collins. They are sort of slightly nerdy, but not too nerdy. They like studying, they like reading books, they hate boy bands. The only reason they usually end up going to, you know, whether it's a One Direction concert or a 5 Seconds of Summer concert, is because their best friend of 12 years is a huge boy band fan. can and force them to go. And usually the best friend has something wrong with her. Usually she's like dying or something. They dress very differently to the other girls. They wear a red flannel, skinny jeans and black Converse. If they're feeling extra spicy, the flannel will be open and they'll have a Nirvana band tee underneath. Sometimes the dress sense can range slightly. If it's a little bit more of a smutty fanfiction and the original character is meant to sort of be like a good girl, virgin Christian type, she'll be wearing a lot of knee-length dresses and skirts, you know, blue jeans and sort of dainty frilly tops, and they'll always be wearing a cross necklace. They usually have a tough school life. They're usually bullied by a popular girl, or sometimes even bullied by the love interest, because there's falling in love with your bully fanfictions, which is just crazy. Sometimes they'll have a bad home life as well. Either have an abusive or an absent or a deceased parent or parents. And don't get me wrong, I totally understand that people do grow up in very tragic circumstances, but I do think the fact that all of these very unfortunate events and circumstances are very common within fanfiction, I do think that it can lead to a bit of romanticization. But I mean, I'm going to elaborate more on romanticization and glorification later in this video. Now let's talk about common tropes within the love interest. This is very much often applied to Harry Styles, but it can be applied to other One Direction band members such as Zayn, or just other bands in general such as 5 Seconds of Summer. Firstly, they're usually an absolute arsehole. They're rude, they're arrogant, they don't like the reader either, and sometimes, like I said before, they're even the original character's bully. They're a player, they're a heartbreaker, they sleep around a lot, and if the fanfic is smutty, they'll want to show the reader like how to have sex, basically. Now this is a very key part to especially Harry Styles fanfictions, is that he has a dark and tragic past, okay? Perhaps again a deceased or abusive or an absent parent slash parents. And related to the love interest's dark and tragic past is the original character often wants to fix them or try to save them or try to change them, which again is very problematic, but I will elaborate later in the video. And lastly, I want to discuss common storyline tropes and sort of how these stories tend to unfold, sort of the cliches within them. One of the most popular storylines is bad boy with a dark and tragic past falls for the good girl slash nerdy girl, and if it's sexual and smutty, then it will usually be that she's a Christian for some reason. There's also good girl slash loser falls in love with her bully. There is a worrying amount of kidnapping and selling stories. I was kidnapped by One Direction. My parents sold me to Harry Styles. My personal favourite was falling in love with your best friend. They were just so pure. There's also falling in love with your roommate. There's falling in love with your best friend's older brother. Falling in love with your older brother's best friend. And then there's also adopted by One Direction fanfictions, which if they do get romantic or smutty, then that is... Usually these stories are written in first person, and usually the original character hates the love interest. Whether the love interest has kidnapped them, the love interest is their bully, the love interest is their brother's best friend, they usually start out hating them. If it's very One Direction boy band focused, hating One Direction. They're not like other girls, they don't listen to boy bands. One of my favourite tropes in these One Direction fanfictions, the original character decides to go to a One Direction concert with her best friend who's dying, and they get into the front row, but because the reader hates boy bands and she's not like other girls, she spends the whole time reading a book. I love this trope. Harry Styles notices her because she's not like other girls. She reads books. Like, I just cannot believe, like, reading a book in the middle of a fucking mosh pit because you hate boy bands that much. If One Direction ever have a reunion, I want to see at least one person in that mosh pit with a book to see if anyone understands the reference. Slowly but surely, the love interest tries to break down the original character's barriers. Sometimes they'll have to share a bed because they book a hotel and there's only one bed. The original character will be showering and Harry Styles will have to come in because he needs to use the toilet. A lot of the time it's very slow burn, but eventually they end up falling in love and usually end up in a relationship. But the madness does not end there, because usually with these fics, It is full of conflict. Their relationship is so fucking messy. And just on a different note, I'm gonna have to read this out, but I did write some of my personal favourite lines, cliche lines, which pop up in fanfictions because I absolutely live for this shit. Our lips collided. Our tongues battled for dominance. I stared into his green orbs before our lips crashed together and I saw stars. So as I said, the relationship is usually full of conflict, and I am going to elaborate on why that is quite problematic later on in this video, but you can obviously tell why the relationship is full of conflict, and that is because a lot of people who write these fan fictions are young people, right? They usually haven't written books before and they're writing it on Wattpad, updating it chapter by chapter. So they want to try and keep, you know, their readers as engaged as possible, and the only way they can think of doing it is for the original character and the love interest to be butting heads all the time. And there's just a shitload of problematic behaviour. Usually the relationship is very toxic, it's very manipulative, borderlining on abusive, sometimes is abusive. I remember reading a Draco fanfiction and Draco slapped the reader and it was just taught as a bump in the road. And any of the love interests, problematic, borderlining on abusive, or if not abusive behaviour, is blamed on their dark and tragic past. You know, the original character is constantly trying to save and fix them, and then sometimes a near-death experience happens to the original character, usually happens after an argument. Sometimes these fanfictions even end in the original character dying. Overall, these fanfictions were truly filled with so much angst, but that's sort of all the tropes that I could think of. But if you guys can think of anything else, please leave a comment, because I actually cannot wait to read the comments of this video. So now I'm going to be talking about problematic tropes within fanfiction, and the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that I know that a majority of these fanfictions were written years ago, absolute years ago, and I'm pretty sure not only the writers but all of us look back on it and realise, hey, that's probably not how a healthy relationship is. And I'm not trying to hate on the writers here. I'm sure the writers aren't internalised misogynists or trying to romanticise abusive relationships, but I do think that it's important to look back on this and reflect on it and just pick it apart a little bit, analyse it, because fanfiction was such a big part of our life growing up. I just think it's nice to look back on it now that we're all older and wiser and realise that, you know, relationships aren't meant to be like this. So the first thing I want to talk about is the romanticisation of abusive relationships. I do not believe that this was intentional at all. Like I said, I think they were just trying to keep the book entertaining, and I really doubt any of the writers had been in relationships before or been in healthy relationships before. And I'm sure a lot of us already know this, but I do want to reiterate that it is not normal to argue with your partner every day. It's not normal for your partner to hit you, even if it was just once and because they have a tragic past. It is not normal for your partner to take their rough background out on you. It is not normal for your partner to talk to you like you are a literal piece of shit. And most importantly, I feel like there is this pressure which is put on women often to try and change men, to try and fix men. It is not your job to change or fix someone. They need to do that shit on their own accord. And I do think it's quite common for young girls and women to have a saviour complex or to have a bit of white knight syndrome. If you guys don't know what white knight syndrome is, I'm pretty sure I've spoken about it on my channel before, but it's when people sort of have this internal need to try and sort of fix people and save people in intimate relationships, and often enter intimate relationships with very damaged and vulnerable people. And I don't think it's uncommon for girls and women to develop a saviour complex growing up. I think it would explain why characters like Draco Malfoy or Tate Langdon are so popular amongst females, and it also would explain why the side of the true crime community which romanticises serial killers, it would explain why a majority of that community is made up of women. And another problematic part of these fan fictions was the misogyny within them. them. Like I said before, I don't think these writers were internalized misogynists or awful people. I think it's pretty normal for girls to go through a phase where they feel like they can't relate to any other girls around them. Sometimes that is related to sort of jealousy and envy, and I myself went through a phase where I was a little bit boy crazy, and I was extremely jealous of girls that would get male attention because I didn't get any male attention at all growing up, and I think a lot of girls would rather own it, and I think that's where the sort of I'm not like other girls stems from. And it is unfortunate that the I'm not like other girls tropes ends up leading to a lot of woman bashing and slut shaming. You know, the popular bitchy girl has long blonde hair and wears loads of makeup, she wears skimpy short skirts and tops with her cleavage out, she's dumb but her parents are rich so she can get into whatever college she wants to, all she does is drink and sleep around. And even though the love interest bad boy sleeps around and is promiscuous and a heartbreaker, when the popular girl sleeps around she's a dumb slutty bimbo. And I also think the trope of I'm not like other girls because I wear Converse was born because when you are a teenager you cannot help but feel so different. Your hormones are going crazy and you're so emotional that you literally feel like you cannot relate to absolutely anyone. And I also think when you're a teenager you have very much tunnel vision, self-absorbed mindset. So I think that a lot of girls and guys actually, I think a lot of teenagers in general fail to recognize that there are so many people around them who are like them because all they're doing is focusing on themselves. So why did we love this sort of very niche genre of fan fiction so much? Why was it so popular? And I think one of the main reasons is that when you read fan fiction or write fan fiction, you're vicariously living through it, and I think a lot of boy band fans had a lot of similar interests, a lot of similar hobbies, and also had very similar dress sense too. And obviously fan fictions inspire other fan fictions, which sort of explains why all of them started to look the same. Probably one of the most iconic and influential fan fictions of all time was After by Anna Todd. If you guys want to see a full review, I would highly recommend Belle's video. She did an amazing review on After. She doesn't upload anymore, which actually breaks my heart, but she has some amazing uploads about fanfiction, so I would highly recommend her channel. If you guys don't know what After is, it's a Harry Styles and original character fanfiction. Bad boy meets good virgin girl, teaches her sex, you know how it is. And obviously he has a dark past. How could I forget that? This fanfiction has over 1 billion reads on Wattpad. It got adapted into a book, but obviously they had to change the names for legal reasons, and then it recently got adapted into a film, which I watched and it was very bad. It was like enjoyable bad, do you know what I mean? And this isn't me coming after Anna Todd at all. I think it's kind of amazing how much success she's achieved by writing a Wattpad fanfiction book and updating it chapter by chapter. I just think it's a shame that After of all fan fictions is sort of the poster child for fan fictions, because After isn't very good and it does romanticize abusive relationships, which is a huge shame. I do think they adapted After into a movie a little bit too late because all of us watched it like, what the fuck? I'm sure if they released it years ago it would have been like, oh my god, this shit's amazing. But obviously we look back on it now and realise that the relationship within the book After is very problematic. But yeah, no, this is video done. I think it was a little bit like not as in-depth. If you guys want me to do another video about fanfiction, let me know. I had a fucking great time researching for this video. This was so fun. But yeah, if you guys are new here, don't forget to subscribe. I upload videos weekly. I'm trying to go back to my Sunday routine, but suddenly I've ended up uploading on Wednesdays for some reason. Yes, I hope all of you guys are staying safe, most importantly, and I will see you guys next week. Goodbye. Mwah.